Thanks, Fred. The format for this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary announcements, a coffee and snack break, and then our main speaker. Our first speaker tonight is Dylan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan, and I'm an alcoholic. First off, I would like to say thank you to Matt, and thank you to Randy for asking me to speak, and welcome to our newcomers. And, when I first got to AA, I was very confused. I did not really know where I was. I had never really heard about AA before, and, I saw a couple things on the wall. I saw the traditions, and I saw the 12 steps. So I'd like to start off my pitch tonight with just saying, two of my favorite traditions are Tradition 5. If you're new here, we assemble as a group because our primary purpose is to help you maintain and achieve sobriety. And secondly, my second favorite tradition would be Tradition 3, which means if you're wondering how you become part of our group, it's a desire to basically be sober, and just a desire. And we don't shun you away if you're drunk, and we don't kick you out. And that really meant a lot to me when I was new. And so I will keep it with the traditional format of what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And one of my earliest childhood memories, and I'll keep this brief, but I was on a playground, and I was standing I have a vision of it. I was kind of standing just by myself, right? And I was watching all these other kids play. And I don't really remember exactly what I was thinking, but I just felt very lonely. And, that loneliness, even, I could be my point to this is that I could be in a room full of people, and I could still feel very alone. And then as I got older, that loneliness kind of turned into, kind of a theme in my life. And I'll jump ahead a little bit here. By the time I was about 13 years old, I had a couple of friends, and this is when my first introduction to alcohol began. I had my bar mitzvah. It's a Jewish tradition kind of thing, kind of a party, ceremony, kind of stuff like that. So, but you basically drink alcohol at these parties. So I was 13 years old, and of course, I went to maybe about 5 or 10 bar mitzvahs in my 13th year of age. And I didn't not, can I say that I was alcoholic off the bat? No, at first it was fun for me. I had fun at these parties when I was 13. I didn't consume, a large amount, but I consumed enough. And so that was my first introduction to alcohol. And then after that, it became kind of commonplace for me to, maybe have a little bit of wine with dinner. And my parents would be were okay with it. And, I didn't go crazy at 13, but, I was slowly building up my progression to be a fairly heavy alcoholic drinker by the time I was 27. And so I'm going to fast forward a little bit here, and I'm going to go all the way to high school. And in high school, I started really drinking and using an outside subject. And, I would party. I would go to frat parties even though I was only, like 16, 17, 18. So, we're talking more of the heavy drinking here. And, at first, I was the life of the party, we like to say. I am a good, moderate drinker. If I can control and enjoy it, even today, I would do it. But I've learned that because from failed experiments, that I cannot. I am not a control and or enjoy kind of guy, particularly with alcohol. So basically, the game was on, right? The life was in session. I was drinking. I graduated high school. I went to my first 2 years of college, and I joined a fraternity myself. And that's where it started to become kind of problems fun with problems, I like to say. It wasn't exactly just problems yet, but it was kind of like fun with problems. We're talking about blackouts, heavy consumption of alcohol on a regular basis. My schooling was affected, and I'll just, I keep it very general, but, you get the broad scope of the idea. And then kind of what happened. After my second year of college, I don't exactly know how this thought kind of rang into my mind, but I had a moment of clarity, per se. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm really an F-up, right? I'm really screwing up. Maybe I should, not drink alcohol and do the outside stuff. And, I would like to say that I rang up AA and was, all in at that point. But the honest truth is, I didn't know what AA was. I'm a single son, and I've never heard of AA at that point. And I had no resources to take myself out of my own situation at that point. And so, I would like to say that I got sober then, but that's not when I hit my bottom. And so this is all going to kind of lead up to my bottom, per se, my alcoholic bottom. And so it took me, approximately another 5 to 6 years of pretty bad drinking to really to hit a bottom. And it accumulated. I was working for a company as a mailroom clerk / receptionist, and I was working 5 days a week, basically normal hours. Let's say, I would just technically start at 9, I'd leave at, 5. But I would come home and I would drink, and then I'll go to bed. And I did that for about a year, a little bit longer than a year, actually. And it finally accumulated in an event in which I was wound myself up in county, and and I was pretty psychotic. I'll just I keep it general. It's pretty psychotic, pretty drunk, just drunk and just angry and sad, lonely. I had no friends at that point. And it was just it was a really tough time in my life, and even then, nobody around me had suggested AA to me, and so I had no exact resource to go to, and so that happened. So I ended up going to a hospital, and then I ended up going into a sober living. And, and if any of the guys or girls that are here in sober living, I applaud you, because for some people, I think sober living is necessary. I think for a lot of people, it can be suggested, especially for my age group, particularly, because I was 20. Oh, I forgot, my sobriety is June 1st, 2017. So I was 27 years old when I got sober, and I spent 2.5 years in a sober living. And honestly, okay, thank you. And frankly, that was a long time. And honestly, I have to say, the longer you can stay in a sober living and you can deal with it, do it, because it was really, no, I'm serious, because it was very helpful to me to have that structure, to have that friend group. And I'm just going to fast forward now, what it's like today. I've worked the steps. My sponsor's sitting in the room. I joined up AA. And, in my first meeting, I cried like a baby. Maybe some of you were in that first meeting, 9:30. But my first meeting was at the South Bay Alano Club at the 9:30 a.m.s. And I just didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. And I saw the steps. I saw the traditions. I thought you guys were a cult. I'm not even joking. But I've learned, otherwise. You guys are friendly, nice people that want to help. It's, and it's in our traditions. And I have been able to maintain and achieve sobriety, and it's been a really wonderful thing. About 2.5 years after I got out of sober living, I got my own place. I got a full-time for me job. It's a part-time job, but okay, I won't lie there. It's a part-time, but it feels full-time. But I take on a lot of additional shifts. Yeah. No, I was just joking here, but it's a great job. I really appreciate it, and I like to say one thing more about sobriety. What, a minute left? I get the opportunity to work in recovery, and I get to see a lot and meet a lot of people whose maybe first interaction is with another alcoholic, and it's really important to have that kind of welcoming atmosphere and have the person there, and just somebody there, right? Just somebody there, just to say hello, how you doing? Show them the rooms. And it's really been really been a pleasure to be able to work in the field of recovery, and it's been really wonderful. So I will say thank you, and yes, thank you.
Everybody, I'm Trenton. I'm an alcoholic. How you like me so far? I'm grateful to be here tonight. It's an honor and a privilege. Hi, Zoom. It's an honor and a privilege to participate in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And especially so because my dear friend Kelly, who's not even here, I don't know where she went, asked me to be here tonight, and to be here for her 18th birthday is especially special to me. So really good to be here. Also want to thank Joe for opening his home once again and being such an amazing host. Just a great time. Last time I did this, Joe invited me on a bike ride, and I said yes, and he damn near killed me. So I told Kelly this time when we set it up, I said no bike rides this time. I couldn't keep up with him. I could not keep up with him. And so then today he offered to go for a walk. And I said, no, Joe, we're not going for a walk. We're going for a nap. It's good to see everybody. You missed my shout out, Kelly. Sorry. I'll start over. My name's Trenton. I'm an alcoholic. I said happy birthday. And I said it's very special to be here tonight when you're celebrating 18 years. And this is where I met Kelly when I spoke here the first time. We're dear friends, one of my very best friends, and this is where we met when I spoke here the last time, so it's awesome. And it's good to see good friends, Randy and Leslie and Jeannie and Guy and several of you that I've gotten to know over the years. It's really good to see you and good to be with you. Let me give you the stats real quick, get those out of the way. I've got a sponsor, Dan D. from Beaumont. I've got a home group, which is a Monday night inland group. We meet in Redlands on Monday nights at 7:30. If you're ever in Redlands, I don't know why you would want to be, but if you're ever in Redlands on a Monday night, come join us. We'd love to have you. And then last but not least, on October 4th, 2006, I was given the greatest gift that a guy like me could ever hope for. And that's, of course, my sobriety date. By no means is that my first sobriety date, but I pray to God it's my last. And I want to thank Dylan for a great first talk. Was fantastic. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And welcome if you're new. Welcome to this life-saving, life-changing place. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the way that I get to live my life today as a result of meeting you. And so a little bit about me, a little history, what I used to be like, what happened, and what I'm like now. Before I ever took a drink, I come from a broken home. I was raised in the trailer park. Any other trailer park kids here? Please, there better be one. Are you serious? You don't have trailer parks here? Oh, thank you. I was not happy about growing up in the trailer park, and grew up on food stamps and government cheese, got my school clothes from the Leroy's Boys Home thrift store, and I was pissed. I was pissed when I was a kid. I looked around and everybody else had a mom and a dad, and I didn't. Everybody else had nicer clothes and nicer homes, and I always had that. I was just angry. I was angry, and I had that sense of loneliness. I could be in a room full of people, and I felt all alone. In fact, the more people in the room, the more alone I felt. And I don't know where that comes from, but I always had that. Just that deep sense of loneliness, that separate, apart feeling. as far back as I can remember, that's how I felt. And, you know, for a long time, I would tell you those things to explain why I drank the way that I drink. And the truth is, a lot of speakers will say, that's not what makes me an alcoholic. The truth is, I am not qualified to know what makes me an alcoholic. I don't know why I'm an alcoholic. I know growing up like that, you know, my home, it wasn't very clean, it wasn't well kept, it wasn't anything I saw on TV. And I did grow up with this real lonely, shameful feeling like I'm not good enough. But I had a sister that grew up in that same home, and she's not an alcoholic. She grew up in the same conditions, and she's not an alcoholic. So I don't say that to blame my drinking on how I was raised. The main reason I tell you that is because when I was 13 years old, I found the solution. You pour some booze on it, and it doesn't matter how long it's been since you saw your dad or what your address is. And our book says that men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I think that's true. I just think it's an understatement, man, because I am in love. I am in love with the effect produced by alcohol. I love everything. Even before I took a drink, I love the shapes of the bottles. I noticed early on that the people with that drink in their hand at a party, they're the ones laughing the loudest. They're the entertaining ones. They're the colorful ones. I remember I was maybe 7, 8 years old, and my aunt and uncle moved to a new home, and they had a built-in bar, man. I can tell you every detail of that. I don't know anything about the rest of their house. I mean, I know they had a really nice pool and stuff in the backyard, but what stood out to me was that bar, a sunken bar in their living room, man. The shapes of the bottles, everything about it. I loved and when I finally took that drink and I got that sense of ease and comfort that the book talks about, magic, absolute magic. And I wasn't one of those people that drank socially and then crossed over into alcoholism. I mean, from the gate, I drank like an alcoholic, from the gate. And, you know, pretty early on, I started having problems. I was having problems in school, you know, and my mom was noticing this. I mean, I'm 13, 14 years old drinking things like vanilla extract, mouthwash, cough syrup, anything I could get my hands on. I remember being 14, 15 years old, standing in my bathroom drinking shots of NyQuil, chasing it with Listerine. Not exactly social drinking. And, but it worked. It gave me that sense of ease and comfort. And so right away, my mom is concerned. She's finding me passed out on the couch on a daily basis at 5 o'clock when she gets home from work. And she's trying to get me to go to treatment, tell me I'm an alcoholic, and trying to get me to go to treatment. And in my mind at the time, I'm like, 15-year-olds can't be alcoholics. I mean, it's not even possible, is it? And plus, I'm gonna fight to continue to drink at all costs. I mean, already at 15, 16 years old, if you got in between me and a drink, then you got to go. And so the trouble started right away. And I said when I started that this wasn't my first sobriety date. I was first introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous when I was just before my 17th birthday. And what was going on in my life at the time, I'd had a couple of run-ins with the law. I had gotten kicked out of my high school for drinking Boone's Farm out of my locker one too many times. I don't know if that's one of the natural wines talked about in the book, but it'll get you kicked out of high school, I know that. And I'd had a couple of girlfriends, and when they broke up with me, the only thing they said is, we don't like the way you drink. And drinking was causing problems for me too, you know. And so when I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous is because I had taken my mom's car on a Saturday. I'd been drinking all morning, and I wrecked her car. And I thought that would be a good time to go to her and tell her, you're right, I need some help. And so lo and behold, I was checked into Redlands Hospital that night into an adolescent treatment program. And I was introduced to kids that were like me, that were doing the things I was doing. And, you know, within a few days, they put us in these white vans and hauled us off to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm so grateful that they did that. They introduced me to you, and I started hearing the music, the language here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And unfortunately, I had a lot more drinking to do. I didn't know that at the time, but I started hearing the music. And, you know, in that treatment center, they had a lot of suggestions. And I know you've heard them, you know, get a book, get a sponsor, get commitments, work the steps, and my personal favorite, no relationships in the first year. Remind you, I was 17 at the time. I mean, I'm 51 now. I'm still not listening to that crap. There's no way at 17. I'm like, kill me now. So, of course, within about 30 days, I met the girl that was to become my wife, and she wasn't an alcoholic. She didn't drink. Alcoholism had destroyed her family, and she wanted nothing to do with drinking. And here I am, sober guy. And we fell in love, and we had, we had a relationship like I've only seen in movies. We were young, and we were in love and inseparable, and had this amazing relationship. So much so that within a couple months, she informed me I was going to be a dad. And I don't know how most people come up with their dreams in life. I just know for me, I would lay in that trailer at night when I was a kid, and I'd think, someday I'm going to get up out of this trailer park. Someday I'm going to have a wife and some kids, and I'm going to be a good husband and a good dad. My mom never remarried after my parents got divorced. They got divorced when I was 2 months old, and she never got remarried, and she didn't make that look very fun. And so I dreamed that someday I'm going to have this wife and kids. I'm going to be the kind of dad that I didn't have. I'm going to play catch in the backyard with my son someday, and I'm going to be a good husband and work a decent job and live in a real house, one that's not on axles. And those were my dreams, no big deals, just the American dream, I guess you'd say. And I didn't plan to start that at 17, but when your girlfriend's pregnant, it's time to start. And so I told her, we'll get married, I'll work hard, and we'll live happily ever after. And that's what I had planned. That's absolutely what I had planned. And so we did get married, and our daughter was born. I was working really hard, and so now I'm working too hard for AA. I got this family, and problem is solved the way I see it. Like, drinking was the problem, and I don't drink anymore. And thank you, Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I'm on my way. I've got a family to take care of. I don't have time for meetings. I'll go when it's convenient. And so much for no major changes in the first year, huh? I think I was sober about 13, 14 months. I don't know. My daughter was real young, and I went to work one day, and somewhere between work and home, on the way home, I'm drunk. I never planned it. I never saw it coming, and I'm drunk. But like I said, I'm just popping into AA when it's convenient. I haven't worked a step. I don't have a God of my understanding. I have no commitments here. And I found myself drunk. And I got home, and that's not what this young wife of mine signed up for. And of course, she's scared to death. And within a few days, the family car's sitting in an impound lot because I got a DUI. The job's gone, and I'm disappearing for days at a time. And I don't know how long that lasted. I think it was 3 or 4 months. All I know is I drank right up until I thought she was going to leave me. And when I thought she was going to leave, I ran back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I did that, I started a cycle that for the next 19 years, I went in and out of the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. In and out of the doors, dying from alcoholism. Dying from alcoholism and didn't even know I had it. I would see this guy that's living behind the liquor store drinking out of a paper sack, alcoholic. I see that. People living in the park, alcoholics. But I'm like, I have a job, I have a family, I'm 20, I'm 18, whatever. I'm not an alcoholic. And so over those years, until years later, I read the book and read the description in our big book, Alcoholic. If I read the description in that book, when I take a drink, I get thirsty. The more I drink, the thirstier I get. I can't stop at one. I never have been able to stop at one. And if that was a problem, you just don't take the first one, right? But I suffer from that obsession that grinds away at me, that whispers, this time it'll be different. And I take that insane first drink and set that phenomenon of craving in motion. I don't understand that. I don't understand this physical thing that I have and this obsession. But that's what I had for all those years in and out. Somehow, someday, that obsession that our book describes, that somehow, someday I'm going to control and enjoy my drinking. I'm going to do it without going to jail. I'm going to do it without getting, losing my job or whatever. And so for 19 years, it was in and out of different jobs, in and out of different places to live, hurting my family horribly. I'm described throughout our book. Found myself there many times where it says seldom mildly intoxicated, but usually more or less insanely drunk. That's me. That other part in the book that talks about a tornado roaring through the lives of others. And I hope I never forget the pain that I cause the people that love me the most when I take a drink. I hope I never forget how much hurt that I cause when I do that. And I don't intend to do that. And, I'm that guy and that Jekyll and Hyde that the book talks about. I'm a hardworking family guy. I'm a dedicated husband. I coach my kids in sports. I'm all about my family. But then I take a drink. Then I take a drink and I become the thing that I hate the most. All those vows that I took that meant so much to me. When I took those vows with this woman that I love, and I take a drink, and those vows go right out the window. I hope I never forget that. And, over those 19 years, it just got progressively worse. And, sometimes I'd get a couple years sober, and then I'd get drunk. And then I'd get a month, and I'd get drunk. And then it'd be, the longest time I ever went was almost 7 years. At one point, I went just short of 7 years. I hesitate to call it sobriety, but I didn't drink for almost 7 years. And at the end of this 7 years, my wife and I never saw her drunk. Never, ever saw her drunk. Like occasionally just out of respect for me, and she didn't care about drinking. But like maybe at a wedding, she'd have a toast or something. But one night, I'm 7 years sober, we're going to a party. On the way to this party, she says, "Hey, do you mind if I stop and get some wine coolers?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." So we stop and get her. They sell these things in a 4-pack, y'all. 4-pack. I'm like, what is it? I started like an 18-pack. Never bought a 4-pack of anything. But anyway, we get her a 4-pack of wine coolers and we go to this party. Even worse, at the end of the night, there were 2 left in the 4-pack. Put them in the trunk of the car. That's where I guess normal people put their leftover booze. I never had leftover booze. But we put them in the trunk of the car and forgot about them. A couple weeks passes, and one night she and I have an argument. We're in our living room, and we just have an argument like husbands and wives sometimes have. But it started to get a little bit loud, a little heated, and so I walked outside to let things calm down. And while I'm outside, I remembered the wine coolers in the trunk of the car. I mean, I'm 7 years sober. At this point, I've started a pretty successful business. My kids are I have a pretty good life. My life is good. And I had not been thinking about drinking. And it was just a passing thought. I remember the wine coolers in the trunk of the car. And the next thing I know, I'm over there with my key in the trunk of that car, tipping back a wine cooler. 7 years gone, just like that. We have a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you're new: pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I think that's what they mean by it. You blow 7 years on a wine cooler, that's pitiful and incomprehensible. But rest assured, within about 15 minutes, I was at that liquor store buying that big bottle of vodka, not a 4-pack of beer, 18-pack of beer. And for the next 3 years, I drank like the only description I've ever heard that really describes it was by Dr. Bob. He called it that frightful drinking. For the next 3 years, I did that frightful drinking. Always in the past. I mean, over that 3-year period, I learned what it meant to drink against my own will. I did not want to drink, and I was drunk every day. I didn't want to drink. Always in the past, when things would get bad, if I got a DUI or job was threatened, I'd run back to AA and I'd stop. And this time when things would get bad, I'd go to a meeting and then I'd stop at the liquor store on the way home. I can't tell you how many times during that 3 years I would look this wife of mine in the eyes and make that promise. A promise that I meant with everything in me, that I'm not going to do it today. I won't drink today. And 30 minutes later, I'm at the liquor store and I couldn't stop. No matter how hard I tried, I could not stop drinking. And, at one point, I was thinking about this recently. I've got a son who's 28 years old. He's a great guy. I mean, he's my son, so I know I'm a little partial to him, but he really is a great guy. Hard-working family guy, really good guy. And but he drinks a lot. And, of course, as an alcoholic, we notice people's drinking, right? And he's my son, and so, I've observed it. He doesn't go to jail. He works he shows up to work every day. He's a good husband and a good dad, and he's all those things. And he doesn't do the things that I did, but he drinks a lot. And I was thinking one day recently, I was noticing, should I be concerned about it? As if I can do something about it anyway. But I'm like, should I be concerned about it? And then I thought, if his wife came to him and said, you know what, you got to make a choice. It's me and the kids or the booze. That would be his sobriety date. I am convinced that would be his date. Hard drinker, maybe. And I wish that was my story. But over that 3-year period, my wife came to me with that ultimatum, and she said, I hate to do it, but I can't live like this, and you've got to make a decision. It's me and the kids or the booze. And when I tell you this, when I say I love this woman, I adored this woman. I respected her. I admired her. I knew I married up. And when she gave me that ultimatum, I stepped around her. I went into the kitchen. I got a shopping bag. I put a couple pairs of jeans in it, my toothbrush, and I headed out the door where I could drink uninterrupted. And that's not a decision I would ever make. At my lowest, I would never make a decision like that. I adored this woman. By that point in my alcoholism, booze was calling every shot in my life. And I had to head out that door and drink where I could drink uninterrupted. And I don't know how long I was out of the house. I think it was just a few weeks. I don't know if I manipulated my way back in or somehow she let me back in the house. And during that little period of time, she found Al-Anon. And I'm so glad that this meeting acknowledges the Al-Anons. Because I got to tell you, if it weren't for the program of Al-Anon, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. And that's just the truth. Because as it turned out, it was the example I saw right there in my own home of the 12 steps working in her life that brought me to my knees. She made it real. You know, we talk about this being a program of attraction. She made it really attractive, y'all. And, you know, after a period of time, you know, I was just getting progressively worse. And I found myself, after some more months, I found myself at that place where our book talks about, like I was ready to go on to the bitter end. I was starting to feel really hopeless and desperate. I couldn't stop. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop. And close to, you know, the end for me, I went to my wife one day and I said, "You're too good for this. Why don't you just leave me?" And I'll never forget her response. She looked at me with the sweetest look I've ever seen in a person's face. And she said, "It's because I love you." And she started patting me on the center of the chest, and she said, "And I know what's in here is good." I didn't see anything in here that she could see that day. By that point, I absolutely hated me. And then as she went on to describe it, she said, "You know, I lay in that bed and I cry myself to sleep night after night after night. I lay there and I wait for that knock at the door when you're not here." She described the loneliness, and she talked about having to explain to our kids why Dad isn't at the dinner table one more time, you know, and she talked about it. And then she said, "But in those vows, I said in sickness and in health, and I'll never leave you for being sick." And, you know, after that day, that was like a profound moment in my life. You can't drink that away, man. Like the guilt and the shame started eating me alive. I'm not like a sociopath. I mean, I don't want to hurt these people. I don't want to hurt my wife and kids. And she tells me that's, you know, patient and treated me like the sick guy that I was. I don't know how she was able to do that. And I couldn't drink away. There's not enough booze out there to drink away that kind of shame and guilt. And so soon after that, you know, within a couple of months, October 4th, 2006, when I started this talk, I called that date a gift. And I called it a gift because it's an absolute gift. I think Larry T. says it the best. He says that his last drunk wasn't his worst one. It's just the one that drank away the debate. And that's my experience, because October 3rd was just another night of drinking like every night was. But on October 4th, 2006, I woke up to face what our book calls the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. I woke up broken in every way, just a broken human being. And I had that gift of desperation that morning. And I laid there in that bed that morning, and for the first time after years of going in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, 4 DUIs, 5 treatments, you know, all the stuff that I'd been through, and I finally conceded to my innermost self. You know, for years I'd come in here and say, "Trenton alcoholic." I thought that's admitting it. I thought that's step one. But that morning I conceded to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic, and I knew it was never going to change. I knew that I didn't have the power to change it. It was a frightening place to be. And I laid there that morning, and it was like watching a movie of my own life in slow motion backwards. And I remembered things that morning that I had long since forgotten. Just random things, like what it felt like to wake up on a concrete floor behind bars and not even know what the charges were because I'd been in a blackout. Like wake up behind bars and not know if I maybe killed somebody the night before until I got that paperwork and saw what it was: another DUI, drunk in public, whatever. That morning as I laid in that bed, I remembered a day not so long before that I had found a note slid under my bedroom door. And when I opened this note, you know, I'm still drunk for the night before and hungover. And I'm unfolding this note that slid under my bedroom door. And in the writing of a child, it said, "Daddy, please stop drinking. I'm scared." It's my baby girl, man. Never wanted to hurt my kids. And I'm reading this note from my baby girl begging me to stop drinking. And then she went on to talk about how she'll go to those meetings with me and she'll be a good girl, taking on like as if there's something she's doing wrong, you know. And another thing I remember that morning was I was always really, really close to my grandmother. like super close. When I was a kid and things weren't good at my home, I'd go to Grandma's house because Grandma's house was clean and there were meals on the table there, and she took really good care of me. She always made me feel safe, and I adored her. And I remembered that morning what it felt like to see her on the other side of a thick piece of glass talking to me on a filthy county phone. I remember the heartbreak in her eyes, and I just went back through my whole life, all the way back to to that first drink, and I knew, I knew that what my problem was. I'm an alcoholic. And I thought, man, but AA doesn't work for me. It works for those other people. I see other people getting sober and their life gets better, and I can't do it. I thought I was that guy that they talk about that's never going to get it. But in the back of my mind, I kept hearing that little voice, well, maybe if you get a sponsor, maybe if you work those steps, maybe if you do those commitments they talk about, maybe, and I knew the only success I'd ever had was in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I made a plan that morning. We're making these big, grandiose plans, right? And so here was my plan. If you're new, I don't recommend this, but 15 years later, I'm still here, so whatever. Here was my plan. I was going to hide out in big speaker meetings. This would have been a good one. Out of my area, and just try to get enough time sober that I could go back to my regular meetings and not have to raise my hand as a newcomer. I mean, I'm dying from alcoholism, but I don't want to look bad. So that's what I was doing. I was driving like 30 minutes away from my house, an hour, going to these big speaker meetings and hiding out in the back of the room. And here's the thing. I remember that morning, October 4th, 2006, I laid in that bed and I begged to God that I did not believe in. Really wanted nothing to do with him. And I didn't believe in him, and I begged him that day for just one day sober. And I hope and pray I never forget what it felt like to lay in that bed and beg something I don't even believe in for one day without a drink. And I got through that one day, and then it was a week, and then it was a month, and I'm going to these speaker meetings, and just like had always been my experience when I stopped drinking, the people in my life are happy, the job gets better, the relationships get better, and now, it's a month goes by, and then it's 2 months. And things are getting better. They're looking better. The circumstances are looking better. But this time when I was 4 months sober or 5 months sober, that wife of mine was diagnosed with cancer. And that's not how this is supposed to go when I get sober. And long story short, I was 5 months sober when she was diagnosed, and when I was 9 months sober, she passed away. And I didn't take a drink. Man, I'm a guy that takes a drink over every nickel and dime excuse you could ever come up with. And I walked through that experience and didn't take a drink. So when I met Kelly, like if you know her story, we're like boy version, girl version, been through the same stuff, and where there's a language that we have and this bond that we've shared that's been so amazing, just truly amazing. If you stick around, you'll hear someone. I didn't think I'd ever find anybody that had my story. And then I met Kelly, and after my wife passed away, it was, well, then I knew it was time to get serious, and I went back to my local meetings, and I got a sponsor, and I started working the steps, and I wasn't doing that thing I had been doing before. I was in AA. I knew it's where I needed to be. And after she passed away, it was like the first domino, and all the dominoes of my life started to fall. My life fell apart. After she passed away, a short time later, I had to close that business of mine, a business that I'd finally had some success with. They foreclosed on my house. They repoed my cars. I went completely broke. The best I could do was get up in the mornings, go to the morning meeting, come back home, take care of my kids, go to the noon meeting, come back home, take care of my kids, go to the 5:30 meeting, come back home, be with my kids. That's the best I could do. I couldn't focus on work. I couldn't focus on anything else, and I had to just let things fall apart in my life. And after about a year, and really as hurtful as it was to see them come lock up, put locks on my home, and I have to move, it's painful. But I walked away knowing that I didn't take a drink, I was sober, and really that's all I really cared about. And after about a year, I had gotten another job, and I was making pretty decent money, and my kids and I had rented a new place, and we're decorating it to kind of start over, trying to rebuild my life and start over. And things were looking up, and so I decided it was a good time to get in a relationship. I laugh for a reason. It was not a good time to get in a relationship. She and I had the sickest, most tumultuous love, even by AA standards, sickest relationship you have ever seen. We were like the entertainment on the block. I like what Mario says. we got married by the judge and we should ask for a jury. Because I just described what it was like before we got married and then we got married, and it did not get better. And, it became like, all I can say is in that relationship, I was lied to, I was lied about, I was cheated on, and I walked on eggshells every day for 6 years. And I'm going to meetings and I'm going to my book studies and I'm calling my sponsor and I'm going home to an environment that nobody should live in. And I couldn't let go. Just like at some point I finally got to a place where I realized, no, this time it will not be different. I had to accept that. And one of my favorite sayings here has become, let go or get dragged. I've got a poster that says it to remind me, let go or get dragged, because I was getting dragged really, really bad. And finally, after 6 years of living like that, I woke up one day and I said, I didn't get sober to live like this and be in this kind of pain, and I walked away. And I walked away full of resentments. Our literature says that resentments are the number one offender for the alcoholic, and I believe that's true. I believe what our literature says, and I was so full of resentments, I was toxic. Like, someone would ask me how I'm doing, I would tell them. And then she said this, and then she did this, and I'm like, crazy. I was crazy. Like blasting Facebook with it. I was nuts. And and resentment doesn't even really describe what that was that I felt towards her. I don't know what that was. It was scary. I couldn't sleep at night. I was so full of that. And, I'm going to my sponsor, and of course he's giving me that direction, write the inventory, look for that fourth column. And I'm like, whatever, I'll do it again. I couldn't see it. Like, I was trying to be a good husband to her. I didn't cheat on her. I didn't lie to her. I didn't do those things. She did. The things that she did were glaring. You can't do that. You don't do that in a marriage. And so I'm writing these inventories to try to get rid of this anger and this resentment, and it's not working. I can't get rid of it. I keep going back to, I was trying to be good to her. And finally, after inventory number 350, whatever, I don't know, a lot of inventories, I'm writing out another one, and I finally got to that fourth column, and then I realized, oh my God, I had no business being in that relationship from the start, man. I was a grieving widower. And she came along and made me feel better for a minute. The red flags were there, and I painted them all green and went for, that's not on her, that's on me. And when I finally discovered that truth, the resentment towards her started going away. And I have not seen her now in several years, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I want to go meet her for lunch, but I have no anger towards her. I have no resentment towards her, and if I were to see her on the street today, I could wish her well and mean it. This thing works. This thing absolutely works. I didn't think I could ever get to that place. Now that I've scared out the newcomers, there is a happy ending to this story, I promise you. I promise you there's a happy ending, because there are so many things that have happened in my life in the last 15 years that I so wouldn't have wanted to miss. And I'm one drink away from missing them all, man. I'm one drink away from missing that day that I got to walk my little girl down the aisle at her wedding. I'm one drink away from missing it. A few months after she got married, my daughter came over to my house and she gave me a gift bag. I was sitting out on my back patio and she hands me this gift bag, and it wasn't my birthday or anything, so I didn't know what it was for. But I opened the gift bag and there was a card, and I opened the card, and at the bottom of the card it said, "Congratulations, Grandpa." Let me know I was going to be a grandpa. And when I read that, I thought of my dear friend and hero in AA was a lady named Patty O, and I know many of you knew her. I love Patty so much, and when she would speak from the podium, she would always talk about being in the room when her grandson Eden was born, and when she looked into his eyes, she was looking into the eyes of God. It was a beautiful story. If you've never heard it, look it up. Get it. Beautiful the way she told it. And so after I found out I was going to be a grandfather, I'm like pacing the floor for the next 9 months, can't wait, and finally that phone rings, "Dad, it's time," and I beat her to the hospital. And I was the first person to hold Logan after his parents, and when they put him in my arms, I'm looking into his eyes, and I'm like, here's my patio moment, and be looking in the eyes of God, and I'm looking into his eyes, and I'm like, what's wrong with Patty? Lied to me. His eyes are great. Don't get me wrong. He's got great eyes, but it's not the eyes of God. It's the eyes of my grandson. What am I missing here? And I look back. Like, I was really struggling with that. And I'm like, what am I missing? What is missing in me? And then I just happened to look over at my daughter, and And I saw the way that my daughter was looking at me standing there holding her son. And when I looked into my daughter's eyes, I was looking right square into the eyes of God. And I looked back at Logan, and I was looking into the eyes of God. And in that moment, that God that I didn't believe in, when I first got sober, I just said, thank you, God, for putting me right here, right now. Thank you that my daughter didn't have to call around to the bars looking for me. Thank you that she knew I would be here. She didn't question it. She knew I would be there. She knew I would be there. Screenshot moments. If you're new, I promise you, if you keep your sobriety date and get in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, those screenshot moments lie ahead for you too. I promise you. That's the only way I can describe them. They're like those moments, like you screenshot in your phone, like you just capture that moment. And I am so aware of how grateful I am to be in Alcoholics Anonymous and not to struggle with that alcoholic torture that I struggle with and the people in my life struggle with me. And I talk a lot about my kids, my family, because I think our families suffer the worst of our illness. They deserve the best of our recovery. And when I was a couple years sober, I told you about my grandmother, and I'm a couple years sober, and she was getting older, and she was kind of losing her sight. She couldn't see good. And so I just wanted to be there and take her out to dinner. And so I was spending time with her. And so my kids and I picked up my grandmother, and when she got out of my car, I helped her up on the sidewalk. She was losing her sight, so I didn't want her to trip, so I just helped her up on the sidewalk. And when I did that, she held my hand and she looked up at me and she said, whenever you're around, I feel safe. So when Kelly asked, can you come down to Manhattan Beach on a Saturday night and speak for our meeting, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. If you need me to make the coffee, stack the chairs, the answer is yes. I've got a debt in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's not enough years in my life that I could ever repay this debt. I wish I'd have gotten sober sooner here tonight, because those, what I call screenshot moments, there are tons of them. I could talk for an hour, and if you got the time, no, I'm just kidding. I could literally talk for an hour about those moments. When my son just got married like 3.5 years ago, and he came over to my house, and another gift bag. I don't know what it is, my kids in the gift bags, but he was engaged to get married, and he gave me this gift bag, and there was a plaque that he had made, and there was a picture of him and I when he was little and a current picture, and in the writing it said, the only thing better than having you as my dad is having you as my best man. Out of all of his buddies that he went to school with and all of his friends, he asked me to be his best man. I'm one drink away from missing it, man. When I was about 7 years sober, I told you about that letter that I love that I have these polar opposite experiences, like that letter from my daughter when she was a little girl begging me to stop drinking, and then when I was 7 years sober, she wrote this other letter. And in this letter, it was a nomination for a Father of the Year award for the Inland Empire. Inland Empire is big. It's Riverside, San Bernardino counties. It's a big area. And she wrote this beautiful letter, and a lot of men were nominated for this Father of the Year award. And in that letter, she described, she didn't hide the fact that I was an alcoholic. She talked about it. She talked about how scary it was, and she said, but then he found these people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and now he puts on a suit and tie, and he goes out and he speaks, and I see him talking on the phone to the guys that he sponsors. And in that letter, she described me as her hero. She said, he's the one person I'm always a sap, man, but I have got it bad tonight. I don't know what it is. He's the one guy I know I can always count on. She talked about how I coached her in sports and how I loved her mom and took care of her mom in her dying days. And I got to tell you guys, if I didn't get anything else out of Alcoholics Anonymous, if the only thing I got was that letter from my daughter, I would be so overpaid. It's a beautiful letter. And getting towards the end of it, people had to vote based on these letters, who they thought should win. And it was getting down towards the end, and she called me and she said, hey, you're in the top 3. I'm like, wow, it's amazing. And then a couple days later, she called and said, you won first place. And thank you. Once again, I'm one drink away from missing it. That's not just a saying that I've come up with, a catchy phrase from the podium, although it is kind of catchy, huh? I'm just kidding. I say it because I am literally one drink away from missing everything good and decent in my life, and I have an amazing life today. And that doesn't mean that I don't have my problems. I have my financial problems. I have my relationship problems. I have all those things. Life's in session. My late sponsor, Gary, used to tell me, because he watched me walk through that stuff in early sobriety, he said, you've been given a lot of good excuses to drink, but no good reasons. No good reasons, because there aren't a good reason for a guy like me. You know, life is in session, all the good, all the bad, you know. That's true, drunk or sober, man. People get sick and die. Cars break down, financial trouble. That stuff's going to happen drunk or sober. But there's so much that I would miss if I take a drink. It's a game changer. You know, a day at a time, I can get a little more humble. I can get a little more patient. I can grow and I can get better spiritually. I can do, but one drink and game over. And I've learned that lesson. I don't lie to myself about that. I don't buy into the lie. And when I got busy in Alcoholics Anonymous in 2006, I went all in. I went all in. I do it all. Commitment, sponsors, I do it all. I don't mess with it, man. I don't ever want to see that look in my kids' eyes ever again. I don't ever want to hurt the people that I love like that ever again. You know, sometimes when I'm coming out to speak or, you know, go to something like this, I'll text my kids and just let them know. I'll just let them know because I don't want them to worry about where I'm at. So, you know, I remember one time in particular I was speaking at Scripps Hospital somewhere, and I text my daughter and let her know, and she said, tell him your daughter said thank you. I am not one of those people that anybody has ever said, do you really need to go to that meeting? When I drink, it's ugly, and no one's ever tried to stop me from going to a meeting or do anything here. I absolutely love my life here. Our book doesn't insist on much, but one thing it insists on is absolutely insists on enjoying life. Get in the middle of this thing. I go to baseball games and concerts and road trips and parties like we had last night, and sweet, meaningful relationships you'll build here. I have such a good life. And I'm about out of time, so I'll just leave you with a couple of things. One thing I want to tell you, if you're new, you're going to hear, don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens. Here's my opinion. If you're an alcoholic and you've found Alcoholics Anonymous, the miracle has already happened. We've given you the solution to a fatal illness. This thing absolutely works. And the last thing I'll say, I already said it. I already told you, when I was in the grips of my illness, at the lowest point in my life, the person that loved me more than anybody ever had or probably ever will looked me in the eyes and patted me on the chest and said, what's in here is good. I don't think that's just true for me. I think it's true for all of us. And it was the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous that gave me a little glimpse. Thank you guys so much for having me, and happy birthday.